Start with first news item in 23 races. So, gentlemen, we know the calendar finally. It's been floating. Where would we be? We knew for a long time China wouldn't be there. Portugal was floated, but we have 23 races. It will be a record amount. But I really think the big story in this one is we have a very big gap, along with a lot of travel again this year.
We do, and it's an unusual gap. We used to one in August, like that's planned. F1 does that so that people can go away and spend time with their families. But this is pretty much all of April. I think we've got the Australian Grand Prix on the 2nd of April. And then 28 days later, there's the Azerbaijan Grand Prix on the 30th of April. So about a 4-week gap. And then F1 goes into having 5 races in 6 weeks. So quite clearly, this wasn't how Formula One planned it. But we did have some doubts about China for a long time and whether that race could go ahead, given the COVID situation in there, given the lockdown situation, which they had last year and was really the reason that F1 said it would cancel the race. Now, of course, a lot of those restrictions have lifted in China, but the rate of COVID cases has gone up dramatically. I was reading about it today, and it's pretty scary. So F1 obviously felt like it couldn't go back there. I think it's lost a little bit of interest in China as well over recent years. And there was talk about Portugal coming in and replacing it, but F1 said from the very start that, look, if it doesn't make sense to add a 24th race, they weren't just going to do it for the sake of it. So when they say that, does it make sense? I guess they mean, does it make financial sense? It's a lot of, it's a lot of effort to move Formula One around the world anyway, and to add in another race and perhaps not get the money back from it, that they needed to cover the costs was possibly a concern. That, and we also talked on the last podcast when we were speculating about this, that Portugal has a World Endurance Championship race that same weekend at the Portimao circuit. So there was always going to be a bit of an issue there trying to organize that. So clearly F1 looked at all the options and decided that 23 races was enough.
I quite like this kind of unintended early break that we have. I was thinking about this late last year when we had the 24 race calendar confirmed. As Lawrence said, we've always been used to the August break, and it's one of the things that kind of it keeps people sane during that kind of run in June and July, when the races are coming thick and fast. But given how many races there are now, I've always thought that maybe you almost put those, you split that one break into 2 different breaks, same length, one before the European season starts and one after. You have the flyaways at the start of the year, flyaways at the end, and it might be, you often see it in Formula One, teams actually come out of a break like that and say, we actually quite liked that, it was quite good for us. Might be something they incorporate going forward. Who knows? They do seem keen to keep 24 going forward, but that seems to be something I can imagine the calendar kind of going that way. But yeah, it's a shame as well because I quite enjoyed Portugal. I remember the races we had there; it was pretty good. So yeah, a shame. But then a weekend off's always pretty fun as well. So swings and roundabouts.
I think you look at it from the fans' perspective, though. It's a tricky one because you're going to have 3 races, and let's say we have 3 brilliant races, and then a minute,
huge gap.
When's your next? It's a bit like Formula E's had that problem, I think, often with their calendar and planning it, and sometimes it can lose momentum. Especially, and for me, it's just that it's so clogged during, the calendar, the schedule is so clogged during the middle part of the year. The spacing, in an ideal world would be better. But the problem is that once F1 put out the initial calendar that had, say, Baku and Miami back to back, which I think I'm going to be attending both of those races. That's the plan at the moment. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to get from Azerbaijan to Miami in the space of 3 days, but it's going to be pretty painful because there's no direct flights from London to Baku for starters, and then everyone's got to try and get back across. The drivers have it a bit easier, I think. The drivers have private jets, the team principals have private jets, but there's lots of people. Nate will tell you as well. Who a lot of mechanics, engineers who all have to fly on commercial flights, and it's going to be pretty hard work. Okay, there will be a break before, but then just to put yourself into a Azerbaijan Miami back to back seems crazy. But
Lawrence, you can't call in any favors and hop on any of the drivers' private jets.
There's an idea. Maybe I'll write some nice things about drivers.
I was going to say our output's going to be very positive about Max and the guys that have private airways for the next few months.
I think they like to leave a racetrack and not see any journalists. So I think that's very, very unlikely. But you never know. There's a time to call in the favor. This is it.
Where my mind went to it was you have 4 races across those first 2 months. There's those 3 empty weekends. So you start Bahrain, that's on March 5th. then we go to Saudi, then we go to Australia, then from there, Azerbaijan, Miami, and Imola. So within those 3 empty weekends, I just think competitively, when you talk about car development as well, is this going to benefit teams early on in the season?
I think any team that's having problems or needs a bit of time to go back to the wind tunnel and calibrate their findings, it will be very useful, because the reality is that the constant grind of races, and also sometimes if you have accidents, the use of parts that early in the season can be quite difficult for teams to juggle. So I guess there is a slight positive there for teams. But then again, if you've gone and won the first 3 races, you probably wouldn't mind having another race, 2 weeks later, just to try and cement your advantage. So it could work either way, but it's certainly it will be factored in, and a lot of the plans that teams would have had in place, well, I suspect they would have been targeting updates for around Imola kind of time anyway, maybe, earlier with Miami, but I would have thought the big first update would come after or in Imola. So they will just be kind of recalibrating that. And again, just making the best use of the precious wind tunnel time they have, the CFD usage they can get through, and making sure it all counts on track. But it will change it slightly.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.